here this evening with Sophie Green for a marketplace webinar. But I'd first like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where I live. That is Ku-ring-gai. It's incredibly beautiful land, and I'm humbled that I get to spend time in these beautiful forests, waterways, and in this community. I pay deep respect to the people and the cultures that have cared for this land and cared for these waters throughout time, and also to the elders, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are on this call tonight. Sophie Green started her film career with producer Michael Kuhn, following a start in television with companies like Tiger Aspect and Company Pictures. In 2009, she joined literary agency David Hyam Associates, working with screenwriters before taking the leap to the business side of the industry, joining legal and business affairs at Studio Canal in the UK, with a particular focus on acquisitions and development. She then moved to Perth in Australia for a short time and joined the development team at Screen West before working with C Pictures on productions including Breath, starring Simon Baker. On returning to the UK, Sophie joined West End Films as head of acquisitions and development before moving to Bankside Films in 2018. At Bankside, she's responsible for acquiring a slate of distinctive feature films of quality with international theatrical potential. Recent successes, You Won't Be Alone, Of an Age, The Quiet Girl, and Talk to Me, which went bonkers. More recently, they have on their slate Wasteman, The Ballad of Wallace Island, and I Swear, all FIFA winners and BAFTA nominated. Welcome, Sophie.
Hello.
First up, in there we talked a little bit about the slate, your current slate, and what you've been doing the last couple of years. What's coming up for this year?
Well, so yeah, I mean, we you just mentioned I Swear, which actually was BAFTA winning now as we're after the fact.
Yes.
So yes, Robert wonderfully beats Timothée Chalamet and Leo and all the rest of it to take home the Best Actor nomination, and it won a sort of handful of others. But that is actually about to come out in Australia, New Zealand, maybe this week. Or I know they had the preview, so that will be in the cinemas for you guys very soon. But yes, we also have James McAvoy's directorial debut, which is with Screen Australia, so it will be coming to your shores soon as well later this year, but that's getting a release in the UK on the 10th of April. So yeah, we have a number of films coming up. We've got a lot in post, so those are all kind of waiting for their festival outings. But yeah, they're the two frontliners for general release this year.
Some pretty exciting projects by the sound of it. What over the past year, what's changed in terms of the business and priorities, and what are you looking at for 12 months from now, 18 months from now? What are the opportunities that you're looking to?
For Bankside specifically, rather than more
Yeah.
broadly, yeah. I mean, we've always been very broad and very kind of filmmaker led and very passion driven company. So there really is no kind of quota or genre specificity, anything like that. But of course, at the same time, you've always got to keep an eye on kind of what the market's saying, and be sort of responsible in budget levels and packages that you're kind of presenting to the market. So, we are very sort of drawn to genre at the moment. They are working well. And by that, I mean not just the horrors, but, thriller, action, although we haven't done so much of that to date. But in the independent space, they're slightly harder to achieve. But, yes, sci-fi thriller, horror. Obviously, for us in the drama space, and we always still do drama. So even though I say anything but drama at the moment, we still very much do. But we're kind of we're very much more drawn and focused on the ones that feel good, life affirming, joyous, uplifting, that have a kind of positive messaging. We're finding personally that any drama that kind of holds that mirror up too closely are really struggling with everything that's going on in the world. People want to
Mm.
go and be entertained and feel good and, have hope. So, it's kind of those two distinct spaces that I suppose we're kind of sitting across. It's the escapism in the otherworldly action thriller horror versus if it is in the more dramatic space with an element of comedy with aspects of as I said kind of positive messaging rather than
Mm.
the kind of straight down the line too heavy kind of illness dramas or films like that we're finding unless you have a mega director and a mega movie star, and of course there's always those exceptions to the rules, but from more independent space, that's the kind of two camps we're really kind of focused on.
Yeah. Is there anything, as you're coming to Australia, is there anything that you're really looking for out of the Australian market to take? Or are you approaching it with an open mindset?
I mean, always with an open mind, but what I really want to see ultimately is films that have that kind of local specificity, that really have a nuance, a distinctly Australian voice, a distinctly just Australian feel and tone and story world, but that actually also still has universal appeal and can really kind of internationally travel due to those themes. I mean,
Mm.
examples from other well, Talk to Me is a perfect example of that. It feels very distinctly Australian with the voices of these young teenagers, young adults, but set in a wonderful genre framework that is understood the world over. And then the themes of grief, finding belonging, and your place in the world resonate everywhere. So also in a
Mm.
film like The Ballad of Wallace Island, feels very quirky, distinctly oddball, set in the West Coast, set in regional Wales. But similarly, it's about love and loneliness, which kind of really sort of carried it. But they don't feel like small films. They still feel like big films. So it's kind of not an easy line, like not an easy line to tread.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do want to see the Australianness in the story and the voices, but also being able to see its potential internationally and theatrically. We're very theatrically focused.
It's an interesting thing you said there about uh, you want it to feel that sense of grandeur, I guess, is that
Mm.
key into making it feel theatrical, or are there other aspects that you feel lean into that as well?
Yes, I mean, obviously, you know, the scope of the story, and the scale of the film, does need to feel greater than the sum of its parts, even if it is a very
Mm.
local story. Otherwise, sometimes they do just feel like that. They feel like
Mm.
they're too small or too specific. If the colloquialisms are too strong, those are the stories that kind of struggle to translate because other territories aren't sure that their audiences are going to understand that nuance, and so you need it to feel more broad in its comedy or more or more clearly, sitting in its box of genre, to kind of give it that broader scale, and that really I think is what helps carry from theatrical, and then of course it's always cast,
Um,
unless it's distinctly horror where it doesn't matter quite so much, but
yeah.
yeah.
Are there particular strengths that you associate with Australian films and with Australian creative teams that you would like to see more of, or that you're always keen to embrace?
Um, I wouldn't say, particularly with Australian talent, outside of anywhere else, but I have always been sort of bowled over by the new talent that we discover when we meet Australian filmmakers. I think pretty much all but maybe two of the Australian films that we've worked on have been debuts.
Mm.
So, we've been, yeah, very excited
Wow.
by kind of new talent, and that's something that, has really kind of excited us, and being able to support the next generation of Australian voices and give them that kind of international platform. So I've always got an eye out for who's coming up. But then, of
Mm.
course, really want to maintain the wonderful talent relationships that we've already established. But yeah, I mean, it's this, it's the same as, really what we're looking for everywhere. It's, a kind of, a clear, distinctive stories with a clear creative voice,
Mm.
that can feel unique in its storytelling, while also, again, if it's in the genre space, it's still got to be familiar, and play to that framework, but we still want to find that point of difference within it. So that's
Mm.
always something that we're looking for. But yeah, particularly from early career filmmakers when they're, honing their voice, that's always something really exciting to discover. So yeah, and we've found such wonderful talent from Australia. So yeah, always looking for the next gen.
If if in within the context of talking about sort of relatively new talent, whereabouts in the process, in the development process, do
Mhm.
you want to connect with those type of filmmakers, um, specifically in regards to a project? I mean, not career wise. When's too early? When's probably leaving it a bit too late?
Sure. So we like to see things at kind of late stage development, early pre-production. So the script is cooked, you've done a couple of rounds, whether that's with one of the funding agencies or in-house with, with partners. We need a director attached. So just a producer with a spec script is not enough. We do need to know who's kind of what voice is helming the story. But cast not so much. So, we very much kind of are very keen to be part of that process of sort of building out the package, particularly with the kind of international lens. And of course, it's so hard to get a film financed and made these days. So having a kind of market partner on board at the stage where you're making those considerations about budget, finance plan, and casting, they all kind of have to come together because, if you bring me a package that you've already cast and you tell me it's 8 million, but the cast don't support an 8 million budget and we've got X amount to find from the marketplace, the numbers won't make sense. So, having your market partner on board as you're approaching those casting conversations and you're thinking about potential, finance models, and is this going to be an entirely Australian finance project, or do we need to look for co-production to help us get to the budget number you need? All those things is something that we can really help with, and generally I'd say about 80% of the slate we exec produce in addition to the kind of traditional sales agent relationship, and that is kind of doing all of
Right.
this work with you, kind of holding the hands and kind of being in the weeds with you guys as you're kind of navigating these decisions and kind of trying to pull the numbers together. So yeah, so cast not so much, but definitely director. And yeah, the script has definitely got to be the best version of itself within your
Mm.
own incubator. And of course, we really want to be creative collaborators and as additive and as meaningful as possible. So, as I said, late stage development. So it might be that we share notes on the draft currently too, as well as kind of working with you to build it out. So yeah, that's the kind of sweet spot.
Okay. Um, Sorry, I forgot to mention at the start, everyone, if you do have any questions, please feel free to add them in the Q&A, and we will get to them, and we'll have some time at the end for questions as well. But use the Q&A, please. Um, so you mentioned script. So you want people to come to you with script. Um, do you want you said writer directors to come to you, or do you want writer directors and producers to come to you?
Producers, yeah, we
Yeah.
we need it to come from a producer, because although we are true execs, and can work with you in that capacity. We're not the boots on the ground producers ourselves, so we really need to see who's going to be leading the charge on behalf of the writer directors, and so yeah, it really needs to come from them. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Oh, I had a question about, and this might tie into my next question actually. What makes a project a perfect fit for Bankside? You know, something comes
Oh,
into you. What are you? What are you?
that's the
What?
million-dollar question. I don't even know. I mean, honestly, as I said, and I know it's the vaguest of answers because, but that is genuinely true to Bankside. As I mentioned, there is no budget limitation, there's no genre specificity, there's no language barrier. We work with debuts, but we also work with much more established filmmakers on bigger cast-led packages. And some of the films across our slate, so we had 5 films at TIFF last year, and they couldn't have been more different. We had I Swear, which I mentioned, which was a very established commercial director, but unknown story, and relatively unknown cast. Peter Mullen, Maxine Peake, but not huge names. We had Ballad of Wallace Island, which was a sophomore film, Carey Mulligan, but then the other, I mean, Tim Keyes, and I think he's has a big audience in Australia. But Tim Keyes and Tom Basden weren't known, so they were two not debuts. But then we had Waste Man, which is a crime thriller debut from with David Johnson and Tom Blythe. We had Pablo Trapero's first English language feature, so this was his fourth film, but first in English. And we had Saipan, which was a Roy Keane, Mick McCarthy kind of two-hander football drama thriller with Steve Coogan and Ina Hardwick, and that was a writer-director team, and it was their third feature. So like a complete mixed
Very
bag of
varied. Yeah.
comedy and drama and thriller, and so and the same with all of the at Sundance as well. And so yes, we really are. There's no golden ticket. It really comes down to how we connect to the filmmaker, how we connect to the story, and as I said, do we believe it has international theatrical potential? So yeah,
So I
that's the
guess
kind of
then
bottom line, really. Yeah.
maybe another way into it is what don't you do? Like say
Yes. So
family, you know?
yes, and I saw there was
Animation.
a question pop up about family.
Yeah.
Family is for us, it's harder, um, and wouldn't necessarily be our area of expertise. Um, we've definitely sit in the space, the kind of drama comedy space where it's cross-generational, but
Mm.
but skewing adults. So I Swear, Ballad of Wallace Island are both
Mm.
absolutely that. In terms of true family or children's content, not so much. Obviously, it's a huge audience, there's huge business in that space, but there's a real there's particular buyers that are after that content. There's, particular way in which they're released and channels that they're put out on, and it's just not our area of expertise. So,
Mm.
not so much in that kind of distinctly family only, children only fare, but not to
Yeah.
say we wouldn't do something that feels kind of more broadly cross-generational,
Yeah.
but they always kind of have to sit more adult to begin with.
Yeah.
We also have, put our hand in animation before, but again, in the independent space, it's particularly challenging. And again, animation is either family, children, or it's proper adult. And for us, we've the few that we have attempted, kind of sit somewhere in between, and then they've been very challenging to kind of get out in the world,
Mm.
with buyers having that reservation if they don't know where to put it. And yes, again, we've just
Mm.
realized. So with kind of family animation and docs, they're not, we're always willing to have a look, and there are exceptions to the rules all the time. We did a beautiful animation called Kensuke's Kingdom. We've done a number of docs, actually a couple of New Zealand docs. if we really connect to the material, we absolutely will find a place for it and, sharpen our bows to kind of really kind of make it work. But um, it's not an organic fit in terms of
Yeah,
other content, and there are more specialized partners out there that would be, would be better suited.
benefit. Yeah. What about non-English? Um,
Yep,
yeah.
completely open. Yeah, again, as I said, it's like as long as we see international theatrical potential, then that's fine. We did a beautiful film called The Quiet Girl, which was Irish language, went all the way to the Oscars with that one.
Mm,
But yes, we've done many. So yeah, it really just depends on if we believe it can travel.
yeah. Lovely. All right. There was another question there about uh, Australia, like co-productions, uh, films that are co-productions with other countries, and this example is India.
Hmm. Oh,
Are
totally
you?
open. I mean, the nationality of the film is not a consideration. We work on international co-productions all the time. So yeah, and we've worked on films from all over the world. Yeah, again, it just comes down to the story and how it will travel. But yeah, very very open to films from everywhere. And as I said, no language barrier as long as we see that um, path to distribution.
Um, when you're looking at a project, are you solely focusing on the UK market, or are you looking more broadly at how it's performing in other markets as well?
Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry.
When you're looking at projects to consider, when you're considering projects, are you looking at it through the lens of just the UK market, or are you
No.
considering its
No,
how it will
not at all.
perform
So
in that?
we're not a UK distributor. We're an international sales agent. So we are looking to partner on films that we can be the bridge, for the producer and the marketplace. And so working on films that we can help get sold and seen as globally as possible. So we are always looking for films that have as wide an international reach as possible, so that it can
Mm,
work in as many markets as we can. So yeah, that's the big consideration when we're assessing material is, how broadly can this be received, and from a theatrical point of view too.
okay. Can you now? I'm going to challenge you with this question. Describe for me your ideal pitch scenario. When someone comes in and you're like, oh, that was just that, like, maybe even this project isn't for us, right? It's an animation or something. But the pitch was so damn good. Everything about it just gelled. I really wish this was for us. What is that? What do those things feel like for you?
Um, well, particularly when it's new relationships, if it's team producing teams and filmmaking teams that I don't already know, of course, I much prefer the informal chat about, doing exactly this, where it's sort of they want to understand more about Bankside so that they know how to then tailor what they share, and then obviously, then going into explaining about what their MO is, what the focus of their company is, or the slate that they're building, the type of stories that they want to tell, examples of those, and then organically from that, they might be like, all right, this one feels like the right fit because they've asked the questions first rather than and also it's a relationship business, and you want to work with people that you get on with, that shares your sensibilities, that you can have a real kind of shorthand with and trust. So without having the kind of friendship first, it's not as you're kind of reverse engineering it, I suppose, in a way,
Yeah.
So it's, much nicer to feel like you're building a relationship and you're learning about each other and each other's
Mm,
tastes, and that you can be much more curated and tailored. Those producers can be much more curated and tailored when they then come to send me things, rather than just
mm.
being like, right, here's everything, take your
Yes.
pick.
Hard
I
sales
want.
pitch.
Well, and it's nice to have people that have come to the table that have done their homework, so they do know Bankside Films and the type of stuff, so they can do that rather than just kind of whipping through the whole catalogue. And also it might be that things aren't quite cooked enough and they say that, but it's just a bit of a more of a sense check and you kind of just get to know each other. And so then when something is ready, you've already established a relationship. So those to me are the kind of sit down, kind of speed datey type pictures that kind of always feel a bit more meaningful.
Yeah.
But of course, if when somebody's already done the homework or we know each other and they've got something that they feel really is, a great fit, then you want to hear the pitch. But it's kind of short and sweet is always the key. You don't want to know the entire story. It's being able to clearly and distinctly summarize your story, in that tagline, and kind of, you know, short form that synopsis in a couple of sentences, without, it being beat by beat by beat. That's really crucial. But that's a skill, of itself.
An
And,
art,
I
yes.
think, that we all need, you know, need to hone. So, but, showing that your story inside out and can pitch it better than anyone else is also really important because this is your baby. So,
Yeah.
you really need to be able to pitch it clearly, and succinctly. But yeah, so those are the kind of ones I always feel are a bit more
Mm.
meaningful. But also, having a solid, deck and things like that is helpful, when it comes to actually submitting it to me, you know, you can be shorter, in the one-to-one and let the deck and script
Mm.
sing for itself, Um, so
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Is there
yeah.
anything that, coming into a pitch that internally you're immediately going, oh no, no,
No, no, of course not. Um,
no.
being diplomatic. Yeah. No, no,
Question
no.
in the Q&A. In a pitch, do you want to have the writer, director there as well, or producer first and then filmmakers later?
I mean, either or, if it's a pitch, then I think it can be helpful, because they can bring their kind of vision for it right up front. And then obviously we've then got to go away and read it. So, in that kind of pitch forum, it can be additive, but it's not necessary. I mean, once we've responded to the material and maybe do a reach out, kind of discuss it further, in that meeting, I always prefer producer first because you might be getting into the harder money questions, things that the filmmaking, the creative writing, directing team don't necessarily need to be a part of. I mean, some really want to, but others don't. And also they might not want to know that I want to slash their budget in half and things like that. So generally producer first, once we've read it and if we respond, and then generally then there'd be another where I'd be like, right, I really want to meet the filmmaker because I want to hear their vision and I want to
Mm,
hear, how, what their intentions are. On the screen. So
mm,
yeah, once the script has been read, kind of to that two stage sort of process, but up front in that first initial pitch, yeah, it just depends on you guys. If you feel that they
mm,
can pitch it better than you, then absolutely bring them along. Because obviously we haven't read it yet, so there's only so much detail
mm.
we can kind of go into.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
of course. Well, that was the last of the Q&A, and we are slightly over time. I will add on behalf of Belinda, who asked the last question, that she production managed the short film that Wallace Island was based on
Oh wow.
18 years ago. Pretty cool.
Oh,
Nice.
amazing. What a journey.
Well, thank you so much for your time tonight, Sophie. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing you in the sweltering heat of Queensland
Yes, yes. I'm
very, very
looking
soon.
forward. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks everybody.
Thanks
And
so much.
yeah, I'll see
Thanks,
you on the Gold
everyone.
Coast. All right, bye.
Good night.